thanks to my Ko-fi supporters that make these videos possible. You can also get a deck review on my weekly Tuesday and Sunday streams. It's the best way to support the channel. Hello everyone. I find that not many people tend to really put a lot of thought into the dynamic a commander in its 99 has. I mean, I don't feel like it's an obvious thing to focus on, but they are actually very intertwined. And over the course of building my own decks and looking at viewers' commander decks, I've identified 4 major dynamics that commanders typically have with the rest of their list. And today I'm going to share those findings, as well as what these dynamics need to succeed, with you. While categorization videos like this can be a fun time, I really must insist that there is a deeper level to looking at these things with a taxonomical lens. There really is a lot to be learned when you are able to give a nebulous concept a strong word that represents it, as it gives you a new linguistic kind of handle to hold onto when you are analyzing a commander deck. You know what isn't a nebulous concept though? How awesome Void Monster is. Attention all duelists. This month, voidmonster.org, an online shop started by MTG artist Forrest Amell, is all for you. You have until June 5th to June 14th to pick up this drop, which features a deck box and a playmat. And also, they're bringing back the greedy playmat design for this drop. Reminder that you only have a limited amount of time to pick this up before a new drop comes around next month to replace it. Use my link down in the video description below to go check it out. Thank you so much, Void Monster, for sponsoring this video. Alright then, let's start with talking about the first of the 4 major commander archetypes, that being the Enabler. Enablers are commanders that I define as creating a game-warping synergy that makes your deck's desired play patterns possible. Without them, the plan A of the deck is just kind of not feasible. Kinesos is an enabler. Without him in play, I can't cheat out big sea monsters, and my top deck manipulation is low-key kind of worthless. Verika is an enabler. Without her in play, all of my self-mill is really not doing much, since the deck is built around basically only cards that combine with her to create a payoff for that mill. Finn the Fangbearer is also an enabler. Your Death Touch creatures aren't going to be giving out many poison counters without him. Now that we've defined our term, let's talk about the pitfalls and strengths of this kind of relationship between a commander and its deck. The most obvious weakness is that the removal of the commander is like removing the glue that holds the deck together. Many people might reach for protection cards, but generally here I think that can only be a band-aid. The true way to have a rewarding deck around an enabler is to build some kind of harmonic plan B to go with the commander's plan A. Now, this is advice that varies from deck to deck. For example, you may find no plan B that fits your vibe well for the deck. Or you might have a commander like Verika that is hard to remove, or cheap, or any combination of other slippery traits, in which case you might choose to have a more focused, single-minded deck, and basically gamble that no one has a means to deal with what you're doing. But generally speaking, having a plan B to your deck is a great way to not have to fully rely on protection spells to save you from the bottomless pits of Glass Cannon, Feast or Famine deck building hell. Kinesos being in Simic has a perfect example of this working out, as you can just run ramp options that don't collide super hard with the plan A of cheating. I mean, there's some people who think ramping is just a different type of cheating, but still, let me explain what I mean. Let's look at Nature's Lore in 3 visits here. Both let you spy at the top card of your library by tutoring up Hedge Maze into play, so you can know if you should activate Kinesos on your upkeep or not. Growth Spiral, Joint Exploration, and Planar Genesis are all cantrips, with one of those letting you set up top deck plays with Kinesos because it scries. And they're all instant speed, so they have insanely low opportunity cost in this counterspell heavy deck. The final ramp options are Eryximethys and AC, which should hopefully be self-explanatory as to why they work with the Plan A sea monsters with Kinesos ripping things off the top. All of these cards not only don't get in the way of Kinesos, but complement him when he's out. And the games where he gets turbo removed, well, then they get to take center stage as the dedicated Plan B smoothing plan of the list. This makes it so the deck, even when it gets shut down, is still doing something. With something like Finn, you'll probably end up with a plan B that runs overruns to kill opponents with real damage, since Death Touch and Trample interact in a favorable way. This also helps the plan A by making every overrun into kind of like a mini Triumph of the Hordes. Moving on to the Enabler's more extreme brother, we have a Linchpin Commander. These are the Demon Lord Bells and Locks of the world. Like, the build of it that is only lands in cards of mana value 4 or greater, so you draw the whole deck. Blim, Oops All Bad Gifts. Just about any Plan A Voltron list. Yurlok and the Mana Burn Brothers. Ob Nixilis Unshackled and all Force Tutors. Now, a lot of these sound kind of enabler-y because they're making possible play patterns that wouldn't otherwise be there. But one thing is for sure about all of these that makes them slightly different. The dynamic the deck has with the commander in this case is downright parasitic. These decks' restrictions and play patterns make it so much harder for them to create a plan B because of how narrow or how all-in the plan A is. Like, what are you doing with all the bad gifts in Blim when you don't have him? Anyway, I define a Linchpin Commander as one whose involvement in the game is the sole way of going about realizing the deck's game plan. All of these decks live or die with the commander resolving and doing its thing. And so here you have to lean a lot harder into protection spells to keep the game plan safe because there is no plan B safety net. So I think right now is a very good time to talk about the dynamics of protection in your curve to make sure you're running the right spells for the job. If your commander is cheap instant speed protection would be right up your alley. This is the method I use in Sephara Sky's Blade. When I don't need to save the queen, I use that mana on activated abilities instead. Sephara is actually a rather extreme example of this though, because in my Sephara deck, I don't actually tend to cast many more spells after her, and basically dedicate my entire turn to attacking with her, and then using all of my opponent's turns playing goalie and protecting her. Something like a Godo Bandit Warlord, though, doesn't have a single mana to spare when it wants to pull off its 11 mana combo as soon as possible. So cards like Hexing Squelcher, Cavern of Souls, and Defense Grid are where it's at when it comes to protecting your game plan. They come down before the big combo turn and protect it from the past. There's plenty of cards like this that sit around and protect future plays that are better for these use every last mana kind of curves. I strongly recommend every player learns the difference between a Guardian Augmenteer and a Tamiyo Safekeeping and where to use which to make them work best. Next up, we have the second least extreme of the dynamics a commander can have with its deck, that being an Intensifier. Here, the deck takes more of a limelight, and the commander is more like an accelerant or gravy on top. They aren't remotely needed at all for the list to execute its plan, but they do grease the wheels. This is your Teysa Karlov, or options like Snail's Radha or my Cormella deck. And also something like how I built Ailey, where she's there to sacrifice my reanimation targets that get removed so I can rebuy my lost life. None of these commanders are actually doing anything integral to the game plan. They all win in the same way, commander and player not, but they are accelerating what the deck does in some way. Where I often see these lists go wrong is that they will run protection spells for the commander, which is just so incorrect. Once again, you don't need this extra oomph. Also, with these, I find that the commander is often played with a poor timing that diminishes its impact in the game. Like, Radha is clear. You always play her on turn 2 to accelerate into a 4-mana explosive vegetation. Great. Cormella is a bit more weird though. Like, do you play her ASAP like that, or do you wait a turn for when you have 5 mana so you can hold up a 3-mana instant? The answer will depend from game to game. This gets kind of extra extreme with something like the Teysa Karlovs of the world. Playing Teysa probably even shouldn't be a consideration until all of the pieces of sack outlet, sack fodder, and payoff are all already in play. Her effect is better when saved for later, when the board is at its widest and the payoffs most plentiful. Lastly, we have the most unique of these dynamics, and one that I have shamelessly stolen from my podcast co-host Salubrious Snail. That is the idea of a commander as a counterweight. A counterweight commander is simply one that does something that the rest of the deck doesn't do or shores up a weakness the deck has in some way. Now, at first, this only sounds like a modifier to one of the previous 3 types, like Jetmir is an intensifier, but you might not run any overruns, so now he's also a counterweight commander. And while yes, Great example. You are very smart for thinking of that, viewer at home. But there are still some perturbing outliers that make me think that this archetype can stand all its own, separate from the other three. Like, the original Massacre Girl isn't enabling or intensifying anything, and she certainly isn't going to be your linchpin. But if you got a mono black control deck and you wanted to have access to a board wipe every game and maybe even run 0 in your 99, she's pretty great. Something like Erebos as your only source of card advantage, or using Boromir in a go wide deck as your only protection spell, is another 2 good examples of this. All of these commanders can just take any deck as its 99 and then provide one of the core pillars of interaction or advantage all on its lonesome, irregardless of synergy. They have the capacity to be completely synergyless command zone options that nix the need for some entire archetype in the 99. And with that, we have the 4 ways that I think a commander can interact with its deck. Is there a dynamic that is unique that you think hasn't been described here today? How do your decks fall into these categories? Did this video reveal the reasons why that one brew you couldn't get working is failing for you? Let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, bye! Whoa, surprise, 3-3 elk here. So I wanted to kind of do a quick little test to see how good my terms are. And here's the rules of this quiz today. I'm going to random 3 commanders, and from those 3 commanders, we are going to judge what kind of deck it lends itself best to. And I'll explain my reasoning after you make your guess. Now, I think there is some overlap to be had with these taxonomical terms, where like one commander, it has like a super broad design and can be brought in a many different direction. But I'm going to rank them based on how likely the commander is to be built in that style. And if your answer is nearer to the top, you get more points. So let's get schmovin'. We have Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. What an opener. I got the weird like Monster Hunter Gormagala printing of it, so I got really confused for a second. Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. 8 mana, 8/8, flying trample demon, pay 2 life, sack another creature, search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, then shuffle. So Razaketh he can lend himself well to a demon's deck, which would make him kind of an intensifier. I think he is an intensifier, just period, right? There's maybe a deck where he's a combo piece and is a little bit more linchpinny, where he just like tutors up a combo and wins the game when he resolves. But I think overall, he's a lot more of like an intensifier, right? Where he like takes the deck that of like go wide black tokens and then lets you turn tokens into tutors. That's making the deck even better. He could be an enabler instead. You could argue that. So I think Intensifier and Enabler are both winners here, where he creates play patterns that wouldn't be possible without him in play, because he turns creatures into card advantage, but also he takes token creature deck and makes it even better. So it depends how heavily you're leaning on him to make your creature tokens good. Like if you're having like Iara kicking around in the 99, some sack stuff, Zulaport Cutthroat already, then I would call him more of an Intensifier. If you opt out of those things, then he's a lot more enabler-y. Okay, that was a fun first one. Fibblethip the Lost. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it entered from your library or was cast from your library, draw 2 cards instead. When Fibblethip becomes the target of a spell, shuffle Fibblethip into its owner's library. This one's tough. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it entered from your library or was cast from your library, draw 2 cards instead. So I could see an argument for Linchpin, because people do love their Fibblethip combo decks with Proteus Staff. I could also see something like Enabler, where he is... No, he isn't, right? He just draws a card. Because, like, what's the other way you build Fibblethip? Yeah, this Proteus Staff has a 68% inclusion. No one's building Fibblethip any other way. The next most popular artifact is Isochron Scepter, and there's Jason Future Sight. So I think this guy's pretty... He's linchpinny, because he's just kind of like a combo commander. All right, moving on, we have Tawnos, Urza's Apprentice, the Trinket Mage special. Blue-red 1/3 with haste, and you can play blue-red and tap to copy target activated or triggered ability from an artifact source you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Whoa, this card's powerful. Well, first things first, he's smug as fuck. Look at this guy. Oh my god. Turn that smirk upside down. He's an intensifier, right? He just takes an artifact deck and makes it even better. Unless you're like doing some weird combo with Tawnos that makes him a linchpin, he's definitely an intensifier, right? Because he's not enabling anything new. Your artifacts were already triggering and doing shit. It's just with Tawnos in play, they do shit twice. Okay, hopefully that went well and you're able to identify one or two points about a commander, what kind of deck they kind of lend themselves well to. Because once again, this isn't like a hard and fast categorization where it's like your commander is a linchpin. Like you can build the deck to have a different dynamic with the many different commander, because a lot of these designs are really broad and deck dynamics are not one size fits all for these commanders. But in general, hopefully you're able to at least follow along with my logic and explaining of why maybe certain decks might lean towards one or the other. Yeah, thank you for watching. Okay, bye for real.